After the demise of Jus, the oppressive clouds that had long shrouded Hyaenia lifted, giving way to the warm embrace of hope and freedom. The people, weary from years of tyranny, rejoiced as they glimpsed the dawning horizon of peace and prosperity. With Jus' death, a heavy burden was lifted from their shoulders, and they dared to dream of a brighter future for themselves and their children. Throughout the streets of Hyaenia, joyous celebrations erupted, echoing the sentiments of a populace finally liberated from the shackles of oppression. The once mighty walls of fear and despair crumbled beneath the weight of newfound optimism, replaced by the steady march of progress and renewal. As news of Jus' demise spread like wildfire, the neighboring nation of Leopardia, long held captive by the same oppressive forces, surrendered unconditionally, recognizing the inevitable tide of change sweeping across the continent. With their unconditional surrender, the people of Leopardia joined hands with their brethren in Hyaenia, united in their shared desire for peace and democracy. In a symbolic gesture of unity, Hyaenia and Leopardia merged into a single entity, adopting the name Gorillist, a testament to the resilience and strength of its people. No longer would the names Hyaenia and Leopardia evoke memories of fear and suffering. Instead, they would be remembered as the birthplaces of a new era of hope and renewal. Meanwhile, the neighboring nations of Birais, Leoniais, Tagera, and Wolfia, inspired by Gorillist's triumph over oppression, declared their independence, each forging their own path towards a brighter future. Yet, despite their newfound sovereignty, they remained bound to Gorillist by bonds of kinship and shared history, viewing it as their motherland and Kodo as their silent hero. In the quiet solitude of his room, Kodo, now the president of Gorillist, reflected on the tumultuous journey that had led him to this moment. It seemed like only yesterday that he had been a mere bystander, lost in the haze of his own despair and disillusionment. Now he has become president with even greater power than Ruda. He surpassed Ruda in might and glory. Kodo's power was forged from the ideals of liberty and righteousness. Ruda's power, on the other hand, was born from the cruelty of steel and tyranny. Silent hero is the meaning of the word Kodo in the Gorillist language, and it probably holds true for him at this time, a lonely and silent hero on the throne, but amidst the celebrations and accolades. Kodo couldn't shake the lingering sense of sadness that gnawed at his heart. Despite his newfound status and power, he couldn't help but feel the absence of Durika, the woman who had once held his heart in her hands. Her memory haunted him, a silent reminder of the sacrifices made in the name of freedom and justice. "Where are you now?" he whispered softly, the words echoing in the quiet stillness of the room. But there was no answer, only the hollow silence of his own thoughts. Just then, the sound of the door opening broke the silence, and Kodo's assistant entered the room, his face a mask of solemnity. "Your Holiness, you have an important meeting at 9 o'clock, he announced. His voice tinged with deference, Kodo looked up, his gaze piercing and determined. "Call me President," he said firmly, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Don't call me Your Holiness." The assistant's eyes widened in surprise, taken aback by Kodo's uncharacteristic command. But he nodded silently, his respect for his leader unwavering. As the assistant left the room, leaving Kodo alone with his thoughts once more, the weight of his newfound responsibilities settled upon his shoulders like a heavy cloak. But he bore it with stoic resolve, knowing that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges and obstacles. Yet, for the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of hope, a beacon of light amidst the darkness, guiding him towards a future filled with promise and possibility. 3 years had passed since the passing of Kodo, the revered leader whose legacy had once promised a future of peace and prosperity for the Gorillist country and its people. In the wake of his demise, however, the nation found itself teetering on the brink of chaos once more. As the fragile threads that had bound society together slowly unraveled, like a malignant cancer, Chaos spread across the continent, infecting every facet of society with its insidious tendrils. The once unified guerrillist country now stood fractured and divided, its people gripped by fear and uncertainty as they navigated the treacherous landscape of a nation in turmoil. Gangster groups, emboldened by the vacuum of power left in the wake of Kodo's absence, began to take root in society, their influence spreading like wildfire as they vied for control over lucrative territories and illicit enterprises. Lawlessness reigned supreme as rival factions clashed in bloody turf wars, leaving a trail of devastation in their wake. The decay of society took shape in the form of rampant corruption, nepotism, and injustice, as those in positions of power exploited their authority for personal gain, leaving the most vulnerable members of society to fend for themselves. Basic services such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure crumbled under the weight of neglect and mismanagement, further exacerbating the suffering of the populace. Amidst the chaos, ordinary citizens struggled to eke out a living in a world where the rule of law had become little more than a distant memory. Poverty and desperation became rampant as unemployment soared and economic opportunities dwindled, forcing many into lives of crime and desperation as they sought to survive in an increasingly hostile environment. As the fabric of society continued to unravel, hope seemed like a distant dream, a faint glimmer of light on the horizon that grew dimmer with each passing day. The once proud guerrillist country, hailed as a beacon of democracy and progress, now stood on the brink of collapse, its future uncertain and its people trapped in a downward spiral of despair. In the face of such overwhelming adversity, the question remained: would the guerrillist country rise from the ashes of its own demise, or would it succumb to the chaos that threatened to consume it whole? Only time would tell, as the nation stood on the precipice of its darkest hour.